Jennifer, the latest on this terror attack. I know the information is really coming at us fast here, but what do you know?
Well, we know a lot so far. One of the most recent things that we found out is that Ahmad Rahami, who you mentioned that was caught, actually attended a mosque that in New Jersey that has ties. The leader of the mosque has ties to ICNA. This is the Islamic Circle of North America. Were named in a Justice Department memo as part of a Muslim Brotherhood Front organization. They do have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and to several of its affiliates in the United States.
Wow, fascinating. And so is this a new terrorist thing, or is this kind of the same old thing? And what do you say to those who say this is more of a lone wolf thing, that he's not really connected to any larger terrorist organizations, now that apparently we know more?
Well, and we've said from the start that none of this is really a lone wolf attack. None of these attacks are lone wolf by nature. These are people who are following an ideology where they need to cleanse and really punish the West and cleanse the world of the evil that is the West and the United States. And so what we're seeing now is two kinds of extremism. We have the Muslim Brotherhood Front organizations and their progenies, and their goal, as they stated 30 years ago, is to use the liberal values of the United States, that's a direct quote, to infiltrate government, politics, and organizations, and to really strip us of our freedom of speech in this country. And that's what they're trying to do. And so it's not that far off base for somebody that attended a mosque by an ICNA supporter and member, where this mosque, ICNA, the Muslim Brotherhood, said we have to keep what we do under wraps. It's not that far off base for a young man like Ahmad Rahami, who you mentioned, to just look at what ISIS is doing and say, well, isn't that just quicker, rather than spending all these years infiltrating the government of the U.S. just to go out and attack them on their own? I mean, that's kind of the end goal anyways, is to implement Sharia in the United States. Wouldn't it just be quicker to attack the evil that's happening in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think back to the clock guy, whose name I won't even use, but I looked at his Twitter last night, and he has over 100,000 followers on Twitter, and he every tweet that he sends, and we all know that he now moved. This is the student, of course, who brought the clock that was taken apart that the teacher thought was a bomb. They reported it, followed up exactly as they should have, and he screamed. Now he's suing probably everyone, moved to a Middle Eastern country so he can carry out his Islamic whatever. But you know, every tweet that he retweeted, I noticed, was something about being discriminated against, being, you know, everyone hates him because he's black and he's Muslim. When in fact, that's just not the American spirit at all. But it's been revealed that Rahami had sued his local police department for discrimination as well. It looks to me like this is all done for exactly the reasons you said, to shut down our free speech. If they continue to sue municipalities and schools and businesses and things like that, that has a whole separate financial impact, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And actually, that's one of the things what you mentioned is perfect, because what they have tried to do, as the Muslim Brotherhood said, the Department of Justice got this memo 30 years ago, which is to create front organizations in the U.S. One such organization is the Council on American Islamic Relations. These are organizations that come out immediately and say, we're going to be watching for discrimination. And so the more that they come up with their Islamophobia terms and hatred and bigotry and racism and all this kind of stuff, it's not that far off base for somebody like the young man with the clock or anybody else to just say, you know what, I'm being discriminated against, I'm angry, and then take it to the next level to really fight back and, they say, quote, defend themselves against the discriminatory power in the United States.
Do we believe that there were accomplices in this attack? And I have one other question I want you to filter into this as well. It seems odd to me. It seems like he was a little clumsy, frankly, like he could have done a lot more damage if that was his goal. It was almost like a hurry up and wait kind of thing, like he wanted to get these bombs out there, but he didn't put them in majorly crowded areas. And, you know, he could have had a lot more impact another way. So do we know do we know anything about the psychology of him there? And then do we know if or do we suspect there were more accomplices, or did he work more alone?
We believe right now at this point, we don't have any information on accomplices yet. We're still looking into that. We've been looking into his family ties. He has a father that moved back to Afghanistan, and so they've had some issues in the past before, but we don't believe accomplices in this yet. We're still looking into that. Now, as you stated with, you know, this kind of hurry up and wait sort of thing, you're right. And I think one of the things that we're missing, this is a trend that we've seen now in the United States, our law enforcement is prohibited from really looking into or looking at suspects for ties to Islamic extremism because, you know, fear of prejudice or bigotry. They're told to do their jobs with blindfolded and both hands behind their backs. But, you know, we're seeing now that what ISIS has done and what some of these groups have done, where it's, we have to take down the power in the United States, the secular government that's purely evil, and all this. Now we're seeing more and more people with the strength and being emboldened really to rise up and to just take justice, quote unquote, their own justice into their own hands from whatever they might read. And so we might not see these huge ties to the Islamic State, but now we're seeing, if this guy over here can do it, then I can do it, and I can get to heaven that way. And so we are probably going to see more things where maybe, sure, they could have chosen a more crowded area or something like that. This young man probably thought he did, but when you have somebody young that's working on their own, they're going to be doing whatever they want to do, so they can either, create mass carnage and chaos, as we saw with Omar Mateen in Orlando, or it can be less chaos and carnage because they just didn't execute it properly, but it's the same exact intent.
You certainly don't want to take anything away from our first responders because lives were undoubtedly saved. But how is it that he planted all these bombs and no one saw anything suspicious? If they did report anything suspicious, nothing was followed up on until the first one was detonated. How could that be?
Well, and I think, this is a guy, and because we believe that currently he worked alone, so he probably was traveling with a backpack, nothing there. But I can't help but think back to the San Bernardino attacks, and I think back to the neighbors, That's one thing we have to remind ourselves is the San Bernardino neighbors, one, they had neighbors that saw what they were doing, thought it was weird, but they didn't want to be labeled as prejudicial or bigoted
right.
or racist because of their Muslim heritage. On the same end, law enforcement wasn't even allowed to look at their Facebook posts. And so, there's a good chance that a lot of people missed this. The first responders missed the young man with a backpack or maybe any post that might have been questionable.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. We're out of time, but always great talking to you. I always learn so much. Thank you for being with us. Up next, we'll talk about